thanks for sharing all your passion about ants and the way you think about uh, ants as a way to think about biology and biodiversity. And you shared some really nice resources, and I just wanted to give our audience a little taste to some of these resources, and maybe you can talk us through them. So um, I'll go ahead and share my screen again.
Absolutely.
And the first thing I'm going to pull up is this great web page called AntWiki. So why don't just give us the dime tour of AntWiki?
Yeah, it's a really great resource if you're interested in sort of learning about ant biology, their behaviors, the diversity, their geographic distributions. And what's really nice about this website is that it's either run by ant experts and or the contributed data comes from curated data from ant experts.
Right.
So all of the high resolution images and a lot of the information about where ants are actually found comes from another website called antweb.org. A lot of the geographic maps actually come from antmaps.org. And these are all resources run by professional myrmecologists, which are what ant biologists are called.
Thanks for getting that term in there. And I think it's great because this is, it's really a good thing. All the current trends and standards in science education now are to get students and educators closer to the source of the data and engaging with the real data. So this is exciting to see.
Absolutely. And so if you become an ant enthusiast, there's resources on there, the taxonomic key so that you can identify what you have. You can learn about things like their behavior and their life histories. As you're trying to identify things, you'll actually need to use the morphology, anatomy, and terminology section of this website because it'll give you can see even just from that first image, it gives you a lot of information about what we actually call specific parts of the body of ants and how we actually measure them. And in addition, you can sort of then look at where your favorite species of ant is distributed across the planet. That can also be helpful if you find an ant in your backyard and you're trying to figure out what it is. If it's only found in a very obscure place in Southeast Asia, then maybe that's not the ant you have. It's more likely something that's already been identified. That being said, we also know that lots of citizen scientists make new discoveries all the time, and we find new species distributions or even just new species based on material that citizen scientists find.
That's great. We're going to post on the website some of the work that has come out of Rob Dunn's group on Ant Picnic and ways to participate in citizen science, but also ideas for making it work as classroom projects as well. So
absolutely.
Okay, that's great. Any other highlights of AntWiki? It looks like a great thing to check out.
I would recommend people just to click around and just start to get an understanding of just how diverse and how strange and interesting and beautiful ants can be.
Yeah, you had previously mentioned, so I think there's something like 10,000 species of birds, 6,000 species of mammals. And so you're saying ants beat all of that combined? What's your estimate on the number of ants?
Right. So ants right now, there are about 13,000 species that have names by science, but we know that number's at least double and it could be triple.
Yeah. Yes.
So, I mean, it's amazing.
A little explored planet that we live on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Not to mention your studies on the microbes that these ants depend on. Okay, so now I'm gonna go, I'm gonna show this poster that you shared with me, which is based on a project. You said you've done quite a bit of work in the Florida Keys, and yeah, I wonder if maybe you could say a word about why it's interesting to focus on a particular area, maybe why this area, what you're hoping to learn from this, and yeah, and the educational value of this.
Sure. So I've had a project sponsored by the National Science Foundation to work in the Florida Keys. And the idea of the project was to understand what is the diversity of all of the ant species across the Florida Keys? Has it changed through time? And also, what are their microbial communities like? One of the key questions we wanted to understand is, are ants sharing microbes with each other? So are ants on one island more likely to have more similar bacteria than even
Hmm.
maybe the same species, but found on an island in the Keys further away. And the
Huh.
only way we could do that is by sampling across all of the Florida Keys.
I
Now,
hadn't, what, it's such an interesting question. I had never
sure,
really thought of that, like a twist on convergent evolution, right? Where you actually can have, within a species, you can have population diversity potentially because of different microbial relationships
that's absolutely
versus
right.
different species that might share microbial uh, symbionts, or however we want to characterize them, might actually have more convergent similarities or something.
That's absolutely right, just from picking them up in the environment.
What an interesting idea.
Yeah, and so one of the things is that because I spend a lot of time out collecting in the Keys, people would often stop me and ask, like, "What are you doing?" And I would try to explain to them how, diverse the species were in the Florida Keys. I think there were over 90 species of ants in the Florida Keys, but we also wanted a mechanism to be able to share something about it. So we created this double-sided poster, and on this side, you can see that we have a little information about their ecology, the Florida Keys species list, as well as a little bit about the biology of them and why it's important to study there.
And
Uh,
beautiful photos, beautiful.
yeah, and beautiful photos, I have to say, it's the wonders of new technologies. And we wanted to tell you a little bit about each of the species. So we tell you where they nest and whether they're a native species or not. And just try to show you the
Ah,
diversity of things like ground nesting species versus tree nesting species.
right.
And then once we had created this poster, I actually sent it out to over 300 schools in the South Florida and the Florida Keys, as well as in the Chicago area, because at the time I was at the Field Museum in Chicago. And we created not just the poster, but we created a little worksheet that we sent along with it to help educators use the poster in the classroom. So we've actually included on that how you can map it to the next generation learning standards so that you could not only highlight the poster in your classroom, but you could actually talk a little bit about form and function or biological diversity in general using this poster and ants as a model to understand just how this is like a small set of islands on the tip of Florida and there's so many species.
Yeah. No, that's true. So this poster, along with there's a teacher guide,
Yep,
a teacher guide. So we'll definitely um, post this to the website. That'll be a great resource. Um,
excellent.
well, that's so good, Corey. Well, I mean, we could talk for a long, long time. I think this has been a fantastic introduction, both to the world of ants and to your work in particular. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time. Any last words to any encouragement to students or educators, or any last words?
Absolutely. I think that you have to remember that your curiosity is one of the most important parts of your brain to exercise. If you sort of follow whatever's making you sort of ask questions or get interested in topics, and also recognizing that that can change from month to month, year to year, just exploring the natural world and sort of the processes that have generated all the biological diversity we have, the number of questions are endless. And
Hmm.
so everyone can be a scientist and everyone can make important contributions to science, regardless of whether they actually follow a scientific career path.
Yeah, that's great advice. Be open to your own curiosity. Uh,
Absolutely.
embrace science, even if your goal isn't to be a pro. That's great. Well, thanks again, Corey, and
It's been
hope to
my
talk to you
pleasure.
soon before too long.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.